CTBK gives executives and owners of mid-market businesses unparalleled confidence and clarity so you can focus on strategic objectives and organizational success. Their multidisciplinary advisors, accountants, and team members have a wealth of experience and are all available and responsive to each client to ensure the most effective advice, actions, and outcomes no matter the situation or complexity level. That experience base and one-team approach, combined with integrated and efficient way of operating, enable them to be truly proactive partners, doing the best thing for their client every time. Visit ctbk.com or call 716-630-2400 to learn how CTBK can work for you.
You are hate listening to Tim Graham and Friends.
Welcome to Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic, here with Jonah Bronstein of Bronstein Sports Plus. And you know our guest from, well, mostly you know him as Jack Glor's father. We are joined by, he does some other stuff, but Jeff Glor, local boy, done good, likes to come on every now and then and talk about his local sports teams. You actually may also know Jeff, in addition to being Jack's father, from CBS Saturday Morning, which he's been for 5 years.
Yeah.
It seems like just yesterday you joined CBS Saturday Morning, former anchor of CBS Evening News. And I saw in his bio that he has reported from all 50 states. What did you do in Idaho?
I was just in Idaho a couple year or two ago for a dish segment we shot. It was like a food related story. What was the other story I was doing there? I've been to Idaho multiple times. I think I've been to most states multiple times by this point.
Well, I thought that would be like the most obscure. I think when I'm out on my travels, that's probably the license plate I see least, other than Alaska and Hawaii. Idaho, maybe North Dakota.
Idaho's great. I think I also traveled through Idaho to do the Snake River Farm story.
Oh, right. I remember that one.
But I like Idaho. Yeah.
Do you like your Buffalo Bills so far, Jeff Glor?
I mean, how can you not? I think it was. It's funny where I was traveling last week. I was in California when the game was on, so I'm on this text chain with my son and my brothers and my father, and there's I missed 160 messages because I was out of service and I missed the first half, at least 160. And at one point it's just I see Bernard is out, and I see we're done, it's over. And, that must have been after maybe the Dolphins scored and tied it. But from then on, it was like an onslaught. And then obviously had the injury in the third quarter. But yeah, there's not much that's not to like at this point, other than a couple injuries. Josh's minor injury, Taron's injury. It looks like he's going to be back sooner than we thought.
Tyler Bass's confidence.
So I'm watching the Bengals Chiefs game after the Bengals get another late call, or the Chiefs, which probably was PI, but and it's that
was a legitimate pass interference, but it does get tiresome for Bills fans to see it. It's almost like you expect that more than the completion.
Yeah, but here's the thing that stuck out to me about that game the most. They had once they got to the 32-yard line, they had no interest in trying to advance the ball any further. I think they were even farther out than that. It was 34, 35. They're like, Butker's going to make this field goal. It's 50 to 55 yards, and he was dead on the money. Do we feel like that right now? I like Tyler. I think he's a good kid. I don't think Bills fans do. How many teams feel like that you can throw out a kicker for a 54-yard field goal with the game on the line, and he's going to make it? You don't have Tucker used to be that way. Maybe he still is. Who else?
Watching the primetime games, I can't recall which broadcast it was. I guess it was, I think it was that game actually, because I think it was Tony Romo and Jim Nantz because they kept going. No. I'm sorry. It was the Monday night game in which Mike Tirico and Chris Collinsworth were just, or what are they? Are they Sunday? Sorry.
Sunday is Tirico and Collinsworth, and Monday is Buck and Aikman.
Right, because Tirico used to be an ESPN guy, and so I get confused when it comes to Tirico. I get all out of sorts. And then again, I still recall when there's too many changes. There are younger people here who are listening to this who thinks it ridiculous. You know, we used to laugh at all the dudes who couldn't stop calling it Rich Stadium, right? Well, that's me right now when it comes to the Sundays and the Monday night games. But anyways, so it was the Sunday night game, and they kept talking about golf analogies, and it was about how these are, these are gimme putts now. These 50-yard field goals, you tell them to pick it up, and they used about over the course of the game, they used probably 4 or 5 golf analogies about how field goals are so easy to make now, and what club you should be using, and et cetera, and par threes, and anyways. But you're right.
It's like
Aubrey's talking about trying to make a 70-yarder in a game.
I know. It's
for Dallas.
To have that insurance policy as a team is really nice. Especially in the playoffs in any game. And I don't know that the Bills, what was he? He was 2 for 5 in the playoffs last year.
Yes. Yeah. They,
and the miss in the Miami game was pretty bad. Or was it the Arizona game that was like way wide? That was Miami. Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know. I mean, you wrote about it before the season. I don't know. It's just a between the ears thing.
Steve Tasker has mentioned it on One Bills Live, and Steve Tasker, a team employee, and B, in this case, I'm saying team employee talking about it being between Tyler Bass's ears is telling enough. Mm-hmm. And then B, the guy knows what he's talking about when it comes to special teams. Not to say kicking, but I mean, he's in all those meetings and he deals, other than a holder and the long snapper, nobody's probably dealt with kickers more in terms of strategy and game planning and sports psychology and that type of thing as a player. So when Steve Tasker's saying it, then I think it's a problem. Now they bring in a couple of kickers for tryouts. The Bills contend that that's coincidental. And there is something to that. I'm not calling them liars because teams, even with good kickers, bring in guys. That's doing your due diligence. Yeah. In case of an injury, you want to know who's out there, who's available. You want to get updated on somebody who you maybe hasn't kicked in a while. There's no tape on them. And in case you might need somebody in a pinch, etc. But I'm a bit cynical regarding whether that was just a stone coincidence that the Bills are bringing in a couple of kickers.
So if you're a betting man, do you think Bass is kicking field goals for the Bills by the end of the year?
Oh, geez. I would say no. I mean, he's going to have to get his act together. And players have done that. I mean, kickers are one of the most bounced around players in sports. Some kickers are out of work for a year. Koo with Houston, with Atlanta.
He's a great
out
kicker.
Of work for a full year. I mean, these guys get cut maybe 2 or 3 times before they stick somewhere. That Bass was a draft pick and stayed immediately. I mean, that's kind of unusual.
I hope he turns it around, but it's I don't know that there's a long leash.
But here the Bills are 2-0.
Yeah.
And about to go into their nemesis. It shouldn't be. I mean, it's like this is a rivalry game, but the Bills have trouble with Jacksonville.
Yeah,
Jacksonville's been a lousy organization for a long time, and the Bills seem to get bit by these guys. And we're also in a little bit of a gauntlet of former dudes. Jordan Poyer, well, you could see why the Bills moved down from Jordan Poyer as he was caught in James Cook's exhaust fumes, and then also had the dumb penalty on Khalil Shakir. And then we have the Gabe Davis, Mitch Morse, and then in a couple of weeks, Stephon Diggs. Do these games matter to you?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, Houston for sure, but Jacksonville's weird because we've lost the last 2 times. That first game we lost, whatever it was, 2 years ago, that was, both games were frustrating because there were a bunch of injuries in the game last year then too, if I remember correctly.
Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer defeated the Bills.
Urban Meyer beat, oh boy. And then last year, I forget what the injuries were in, did
Matt Milano in the London game.
Milano got
But there
hurt in
was
the
more
London
than
game?
that.
Didn't
Daquan Jones also got hurt in that
Jones
game.
got hurt. That's right. So yeah, those were, I mean, those London games are so weird, just like the Rio game was. Or not Rio, Sao Paulo. But yeah, I don't look past, I mean, we should win. It's like the same thing with the first game against Arizona. We should win. I think that Trevor Lawrence is 0-7 in his last 7 starts. I thought I saw that. And whatever. This was a team that was supposed to come on last year, right? Or that was
Absolutely.
supposed to
They were one
be.
of the sexy picks to do some damage because in 2022, Trevor Lawrence had a pretty good year. They had guys coming up, and then everybody receded last year. I picked Jacksonville heading into the season for the Athletic. We had to pick all these different categories, and they were my surprise team. They still only finished one game behind Houston and Indianapolis in the AFC South. And a lot of people are focusing their attention on Houston, rightfully so. They won the division last year. They have an exciting head coach. They made some changes. Jacksonville made a lot of upgrades too. And I think that if Trevor Lawrence can bounce back and be the player he was in 2022 instead of last year, I think that they could win the AFC South.
Yeah,
But
but the
I want to
question
look at that
is,
stat about last 7 losses or last 7
I,
starts.
I thought that's what I saw. But yeah, I'm looking forward to Gabe Davis having his twice annual 3 touchdown, 175-yard performance against the Bills, of course.
uh,
I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, he did not start. Their last win was over Carolina at the end of the year last year on New Year's Eve. He didn't play in that game and they won. So yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah.
Wow, I just gave you usable information.
Cincinnati, Cleveland,
Actionable.
Baltimore, Tampa, Tennessee, and then the first 2 games this year at Miami and then against the Browns. So there's some decent defenses in there, but still you gotta, if you're going to be Trevor Lawrence, glory boy, and you're going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars force of the AFC South, you got to win some of those games.
So I don't think it's a gimme at all, but we should win. And
And that's
I
that.
think that's then the real what?
I said, and that's that.
That is that, but and then the real I think the toughest part of this the schedule then kicks in with don't we have Baltimore and then Houston and they're both on the road, right?
Yes, they are back-to-back games. In fact, they have
3 on the road.
4 of their next 5 are on the road after Jacksonville. That is at Baltimore, at
There you go.
Houston, at the Jets. Are you going to that game?
I am going to that game.
That's Monday night.
Yep.
And then Tennessee at home, at Seattle, Miami at home, at Indianapolis. So that's a lot of road games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of their next 7 games are on the road.
Okay.
Giddy up.
So if we win all those games and then take care of business at home, then they're 10-0 to start the season.
That's right. You can
Easy.
chalk that up.
Yeah.
Hey, after this 5 of 7 on the road, by the way, then they get a break. They get to come home for games and with a bye week also, so they can relax because then, just as a reminder, a lot of people know the schedule. A lot of people memorize the schedule. I'm not good at that. But after playing 5 of 7 on the road, they get Kansas City, the bye week, San Francisco. So a respite back at Highmark Stadium.
Yeah. That's
What are your thoughts when you think of that, when you're digesting that, plus the defensive losses that they've had so far? You know, Terrell Bernard and Taron Johnson might be back by then. Neither have gone on injured reserve, which is a good sign for both that they probably will be back by then. Matt Milano won't be, but what do you think?
I think it's challenging, but I think every week in the NFL is challenging. And if the over under to start the season was 10.5, and they already have the first two out of the way. So that would mean the rest of the way they'd have to go, even just to get to 11 wins, the rest of the way you'd have to go 9-6.
Yep, that's right.
So I think that's pretty doable. I know the Patriots played well in week 1, but they're still the Patriots right now, respectfully. Dolphins have their own challenges.
The
The
Jets
Jets,
haven't proven much to me yet.
no. I don't, maybe they can throw this in our face when they go on a great run here, but and wait, how long is Mosley out for? Did anybody see that?
No, I have not seen an update on CJ
And
Mosley. No.
Jeremiah Johnson, they've had some injuries too. So, yeah, I mean, and Rodgers, I mean, he can still throw the ball. I think he looks like the Aaron Rodgers of Green Bay so far? I don't, maybe not, but maybe he's going to just keep getting healthier and healthier.
You referenced it right after we brought you in here, Jeff, the story that I wrote with Jason Lloyd, who's our Cleveland writer for The Athletic this morning. It ran regarding the NFL's, at least it goes as far back as the data allows, 2006. The NFL is at a rate of 24% of throws at or behind the line of scrimmage. Josh Allen, 31% of his throws are at or behind the line of scrimmage, which is way high for him for his career. Joe Burrow is at the fewest air yards per attempt of his career. Jared Goff, I think he's second, and I'm picking Jared Goff because he's been in the league a long time, but there's example after example of guys dinking and dunking, exactly what people used to make fun of Trent Edwards for. Captain Checkdown might have a career if he were coming into the NFL today. But what are your thoughts on watching games like this with the two high safeties, defenses backing up and just saying, go ahead and throw it underneath all you want. We're going to make you commit an unforced error, and then we'll bow up down at the goal line if we need to stop, to make you kick a field goal. And you know what? Maybe that brings this whole thing too. And how important your field goal kicker is, maybe even more. If you can't, if you're going to play this game, then you got to make your field goals because teams are kind of giving you the field goal.
Yep. Well, no, it's exactly what you said in the article. And it's frustrating to watch from a defensive position, especially those first couple drives against Arizona, because they're just like sort of dinking and dunking, and then Murray might just do a little run. But you also, it's like the bend don't break. And I feel like that the Bills were doing that last year a lot too, is that you can let the team down the field, but then I guess, you really try to kick in at the red zone, and Vaughn being Vaughn again helps when you get down there. But yeah, it's just the way the NFL's evolved, I guess. And you still have to execute. It would be nice to see a couple deep passes though to whoever.
It does take some of the fun out of your shiny toy, when Josh Allen can do all those types of things. But then again, maybe it also opens up the underneath for him to do more with his running.
Didn't he miss we missed a long pass last? Was it?
Yeah, he's uncorked a few.
Scantling? There was an opening for a long pass last week and it didn't happen. But yeah, they're really good about that with I feel like with two thing for the Dolphins, like every week you saw the Tyreek 80 or 90 yard touchdown. The Bills don't allow that. Whether it's, and by the way, also Poyer and Hyde no doubt were great with us. Love what they did. But I think hopefully they do it without these guys.
Yeah, that was a point that was made in the story, how safeties took a beating in free agency with, just teams not being willing to pay a safety. Jordan Poyer had to take I don't know if it was the minimum, but he goes to Miami, and Micah Hyde, I don't know if he got offers or if he's out of it totally. I'm not sure, but there were other safeties around the league that just did not get the big contract that they thought they were going to get. And it's because I think teams think they could just put somebody back there. The space is the defense more so than the player. They don't have to make plays. They don't have to have ball skills necessarily. They just have to be able to close and make a tackle.
Yeah. Can we talk about Vaughn for a second? Because I think that's been impressive, right?
If your internet connection will allow it, sure.
I know. I'm sorry. I see
You're a
you
little
breaking up.
choppy out there in Connecticut.
I know. Is it? I
Well,
see that it's not like.
Not
Is it
great.
better now?
we can hear you better than we can see you. But
Oh, that's a win. That's a win-win for everyone. Um,
what are your thoughts on Von Miller so far? And also from a standpoint, let's not exclude the off-field stuff from last year, because I think that did mix up a lot of opinion regarding Von Miller. I think people were done with Von Miller. I think a lot of fans are still done with Von Miller. From a personal standpoint, all his guarantees and his bluster and saying what Brandon Beane is going to do in the draft and free agency, and then Brandon Beane doesn't do it, and he's going to be back, and then he's on IR or whatever the hell. I mean, it's just he's full of all these promises. But yet here he is making a difference in the games. How are you processing Von Miller as a Bills fan?
he's a playmaker. I mean, he's older. I talk about this with my family and everything. We're always like, we're looking for you need playmakers. And he was a playmaker in Denver. He was a playmaker for the Rams. And like when the game's on and you need a big sack or a big pressure, like it seems like you can still rely on him to do that. And I think that's huge for a defense. Or somebody who can make those plays on offense. But I think having those playmakers on the defensive side of the ball, the Chiefs have had it for years with Chris Jones. There's other guys in the league. There's not a lot of guys who can do it, but like in those like extra special situations when everybody might be drained and the tank is empty, like, do you have enough left for that one spectacular play? And there were a couple plays, like I feel like last week, where I'm like, all right, it'd be nice to get like a Von sack here or a big Von pressure, and you got it.
Yeah, his first sack against the Cardinals was a bit ticky-tack. It was he touched Kyler Murray down for his sack, but the pressure was there. It wasn't exactly a blindside, destruction of Kyler Murray. It was more like a fall down and I'm going to touch him, and he got a sack. But he has been getting pressure on the quarterback. And of course, if he could do that, it's going to make a huge difference. And he's on the hook for a lot of money. He has to, the Bills, if they wanted to cut him, couldn't, because they still need to bring in a player to fill that role. And he's a body. And I think the Bills were ready to kind of carry him as even a below average NFL player.
Well, they can drop him after this year but there's just still some dead money, right?
But this year, if they can, whatever they can get out of Von Miller, I think they have to be thrilled.
I completely agree. And I think Milano's another playmaker, I think. I don't know who the other big playmakers on defense are, but I just looked at those because you're in those situations. We talked about kicking. It's like guys who can make the clutch kicks. Those guys who that one. That's what I would love to see is a Tim Graham article on like playmaking at the very end of the game. The best in the business at it. How you find that extra little gear,
Yeah. Is it conditioning? I've seen similar stories done in hockey. The clutch. Is clutch a real thing? And baseball also. And a lot of people think that clutch really isn't a thing. Not a real thing. Like it's not a trait, but there are certain players who can maintain through stress and pressure and also conditioning. It's more of maybe a holistic mental, physical thing of just being the same at the start of the game as at the end of the game. So they
Yeah.
don't pick something up. They don't actually have a fifth gear or a
Yeah.
sixth gear, but they're able to stay in the fifth gear from the start of the game to the end of the game when
That's
other people
interesting.
have to go down to their third gear because they're out
Yeah.
of gas.
That's like Jonah.
Right. Patiently waiting.
Yeah.
Well, I do think that's an interesting topic though, because it's been almost scientifically disproven, I think, in baseball studies about clutch hitting being a myth. But in basketball, the NBA keeps actual official clutch statistics for certain scores and times. So it's probably sports specific, and I don't know whether it's really been found whether that exists in football or not. It seems like it does, but maybe analytically it's disproven.
I don't know. And Jonah, so is it real in basketball?
I think it's definitely real that, with shooting at least.
Yeah.
Free throw shooting, outside shooting, contested shooting, when when the score is closer, the defense is more alert and more intense. And when the basket means more, the better shooters make it more often than the guys who aren't clutch. So it's a lot like Tyler Bass's kicking that we were talking about. It's a mental thing. I don't know why it seems like it would matter in baseball, late innings and high leverage situations, but they found that maybe just the volume of at bats and the way professional baseball players approach their job.
Baseball players, yes, conditioning obviously is a thing. You have to be in great shape, but you're not wiped out at the end of a baseball game like you are in basketball, football, hockey. You haven't been just busting ass for 2.5 hours like you have, baseball. There's a lot of sitting around and waiting.
Yep.
Maybe there's something to it there. But Jonah, with these basketball stats, do you think it falls in line of what I was saying? Like it's players who maintain whatever they have always at the end of a game, or that there is an actual, like they come even more focused and get better?
I think it certainly could. And there's certainly NBA players that could be better conditioned and they lose steam in the fourth quarter, but it also seems like it maybe reverses itself in the final minute. There's a lot of timeouts in basketball games, and there's a lot of abilities for a player who's tired to get a second or third win at the very end. And it does seem more of a mentality, and in basketball, a lot of it comes down to the willingness to take the shot. There's players who are great players. And this is maybe true in hockey and a lot of other sports. There's players who are great players for 46 minutes or 38 minutes in a college game and then don't want to take the pressure shot. And that really is a big part of the clutch gene, if you will, in basketball.
Wanting the ball.
And I'm trying to think, Josh Allen certainly seems to play at his best when the lights are the brightest and the stakes are the most. And even when he was finding his way in the NFL, he seemed to be at his best in these fourth quarter comebacks.
You beat me to it. There were games Josh Allen was dog shit for 3 quarters, and then all of a sudden he'd get better. He'd figure it out in the fourth quarter. You're right.
Can we think of a quarterback? I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head, and I can't really. Maybe Tua in a bit the way he plays against the Bills, but who's a great quarterback, but in the clutch moments kind of falls apart. Ryan Fitzpatrick maybe, but it didn't seem like that was clutch moments. It seemed more defense specific and the challenge at hand and the way certain schemes and certain talented defensive players could take him out of his game.
Momentum is a big controversial subject, especially among those in the analytics community who contend there's no such thing. Momentum is created by you're just a good player. And if you're a good player, good players beat bad players. I disagree with that, especially when you consider the nuance of negative momentum. We've seen it before. We've seen people choke, there now again, that might be in the moment, but you choke and don't come back from it. You get the yips are a thing. I think that would be considered negative momentum. But yeah, I wonder if momentum is a concept like clutch. But you're saying, Jonah, like there are analytics for clutch, which kind of is counterintuitive for the analytics community. They generally like to say it's just talent, and there's no the intangible is flight of fancy.
And there's analytics people in basketball that believe it's the same way, that if you analyze all the 3-point shots over the course of the season, that there's more determining factors than the stakes and the clutch, and that it balances out over time. But I think any fan or basketball enthusiast that watches basketball games feels like that's not the case, that some players step up in the big moments and some players don't more often than others.
I have always wondered this when they call timeouts in basketball games. Like a team goes on a run, coach automatically calls a timeout. Now, these coaches have been doing it. They're experts in the field, so they must know better, I guess. But I always wondered about that. I guess you just want to like reset something. And but the clutch thing, what I was the gold medal game that Team USA was playing in. I mean, we were losing most of that game, the gold medal game to Serbia, right? And then like, didn't Steph Curry have like 5 3-pointers in the last, minute and a half, 2 minutes? I mean, and he was making everything. So that's clutch. That's a
Yeah.
playmaker.
And his shot making seemed to lift other players to make plays that they hadn't been making in the minutes before that. So there's also like a carryover effect to the other players on
Yeah,
this floor with you when a
yeah.
clutch player is willing to take the big shots and then make them, and it deflates the defense as well. It just seems to have a lot of effects. The crowd feeds off that, and that's part of it in a big, a sporting event with a large crowd that's it's following the game.
Yeah.
Another momentum shifter in sports, as Jeff mentioned the timeout, it popped into my head. In hockey, pulling your goalie, especially in the playoffs. You give up a couple of goals, you pull your goalie. Wouldn't that fly immediately in the face of analytics? Because you're going to put in your backup, the guy who is clearly not as good as your starter in most cases.
Mhm.
And we're just going to say, you know what? This guy's not going to, and I think it's usually, or a lot of times it's the right call. The guy doesn't have it tonight. And that's the analytics would say, like you have on your NHL video game or your Madden, is like when you hit the reset button, the guy's going to come out and play to an 89 or a 92 overall score, and he's got all the traits. But on this night, it's 3-0, 6 minutes into the game, and you make a goalie change to bring in the backup, who's not nearly as good. Anyways, I don't know if maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's just wrong. But the analytics community would say that that's pointless, right? Or I should say a segment of. I don't want to make a blanket statement.
No, it's all part of it. I mean, it's I listen, you feel it's the same way when it comes to a broadcast sometimes, or like you can go for a long run or something, and like you've ever all the conditions it might feel right, but sometimes you just have a bad run or a bad broadcast, and like just something isn't going right. And some days you think you might have it might not be great, and it's great. I don't know. It just those things happen, I think.
If you think about it writing wise, though, I mean, some people maybe panic under pressure on deadline, but I think the majority of writers and even broadcasters, the deadline pressure and that adrenaline you get from having to do a report in a clutch live situation seems to bring out the best in most people, or bring out the most energetic version of yourself as a writer. There's leads or there's things you can write in a pressure situation that just don't seem to come to you when the pressure's off.
That's a great point. I don't want to belabor this because I don't think people give a shit about the writing process. We're here to talk about sports or whatever. But I wonder if it's if there's an allegory there, or if there's a parallelism of going on with me. It's going on autopilot. If I can't afford to think about it, I don't have time to think on deadline. And it's like something maybe it's just all based on history and just it's all becomes instinctual and reflexive. And it's just like, I have to just get this done. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's my best work, but I can work way faster with a deadline than I can without one.
Well, maybe if we get Tyler Bass writing some deadline stories for Friday night high school football, that'll get him out of his own head and help his kicking late in games.
All right. So I have a funny story that I was going to wait and ask this question, but it's too good of a transition. But I am a very young reporter. I think I still might be a college student, but I'm in the visitors clubhouse at Old Cleveland Stadium there to do a feature story or a Q&A for the Beckett memorabilia magazines. And I'm there to do a Q&A with Randy Johnson. And I'm waiting for Randy to come out. And I'm standing in the middle of the clubhouse, and they had ESPN on. And it was a Sunday afternoon game. It was a Sunday morning I was there, and the sports reporters is on. And Dick Schaap, somebody in the media had taken a shot at reporters as know-nothings. And and it had become a segment on Sports Reporters and Lupica and Shap and whoever. I can't remember all those guys that were on there. You know, they're indignant. You don't understand. And so what's that?
Mitch Albom was on there, wasn't he?
Mitch Albom might have been on that one. Yes. I'm trying to think
Vic
of the guy.
Carucci, was he ever on there?
I'm sorry, Jonah.
I was just thinking of any Buffalo sports writers.
I never saw Carucci on there.
No, he was never made it. There was the guy from Philly who had a controversial ending to his life, the columnist. But anyways, I digress.
Yeah.
And so Dick Schaap makes the point of, you don't know what you know what, athletes, you don't know what you're talking about until you filed 600 words on deadline. And the clubhouse started howling like, whoa, and just groaning. And I'm the only, because it's Seattle on a Seattle Mariners. Their reporters aren't even there. They were probably out the night before. They're going to show up. It's a Sunday afternoon. They don't need to be there for batting practice. I'm the only reporter in the locker room, and all eyes just turn to me because I'm the one standing there holding a notepad. And I was like, hey, look, man, I'm not here to say that filing 600 words on deadline is hard. But I thought I was going to get accosted.
Wow.
So I bring this up because I had this on my bingo card for you. Sports Reporters came back with Dick Schaap's son, Jeremy Schaap. Although it was kind of I didn't like the episode. They come back with, it was all broadcasters. So the Sports Reporters was about print journalists.
Yeah.
HBO Real Sports is no longer. You were a correspondent for 60 Minutes Sports. You think of the ESPN shows, Bob Lee's, shows that were off and on. Where is there for hardcore journalism? Where's the room in today's media landscape for shows like this?
It's really tough because it's expensive to shoot pieces, and it's tough. Listen, it's tough to do investigative journalism, even if you're doing it just from a print side. But then when you add the broadcast element to it, and getting all those interviews shot and crews and everything, it's hard. And like, it's a lot easier to just do a bunch of hot takes like we're doing right now, as you know. And so I wish there was more. It was fun. We did our Robert Caro of the Power Broker and Lyndon Johnson fame. I said, how do you feel about the state of journalism today? And he's like, I'm concerned because I just don't think there's enough money for a lot of these jobs to pay, and I think in some cases it takes these sort of big benevolent owners who are willing to support that in ways, but yeah, it's not easy to, as you know. I mean, imagine doing all that. You do great stuff for The Athletic, but imagine trying to do all that on videotape. Getting all those guys you talk to either on the phone or in person to speak on camera, and then I don't know. It's just whatever. This is. I didn't mean to complain. I love what I do, but it's
no, but people, we get a lot of feedback when we talk journalism on here and how things work and why it's going this way. And I think a lot of people look back on all those shows fondly. Sports Reporters, the old Sports Reporters, because I don't think it doesn't look like it's going to come back in the same vessel that it used to be, where it's the hard-boiled columnist or beat writer talking about the things. I think it's just going to be the biggest names that they can find to come in and talk about some issues every now and then is what it looks like, because sports, Jack or Joe Buck, as great as he is, Jack Buck, Joe Buck.
Jack Buck was great too.
He was. I'm trying to think of who else they had on there, but it was all broadcasters.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Nance, maybe it was Ian Eagle.
But
yeah, it's like those sports broadcasters. Yeah, it is a form of journalism, but they're not reporters. They're certainly not sports reporters.
No,
in the classic sense.
No.
I'd say the Sports Reporter show still exists kind of in legacy form with PTI and Around the Horn, and in
Yeah,
many
yeah,
ways the
it does. Yeah,
origins
you're
of
right.
First Take and Stephen A. Smith, but maybe because those people have branched off and it's a little different. It's definitely different shows. It's a little bit of a different style now that the sports reporters can't turn back the clock and come back in the exact way it used to be. It is kind of disappointing that it's all broadcasters and to use the same name and the same pretense and setup, but
Yeah.
who are the print reporters that they would need to get that aren't already tied up doing something different?
Yeah, Around the Horn was a show that I really loved in concept. And I think in the beginning it was ambitious and they wanted to get a large
Yeah.
collection of people to choose from. And quickly it just settled on the same 3 or 4 people.
Yeah.
And only recently have they tried to broaden it back out, but it's all ESPN connected people and whoever they've had from the past,
Yeah.
so it's still, you're getting a lot of the same. Yeah. It's almost like you're on there with certain approvals. You don't know what you're going to get. There's no wild card who's going to tell you some off the wall take or give you a perspective that
Yeah.
and maybe in the internet age, you don't crave that as much as you did when those shows started. But I used to love to see what they're talking about in Chicago and, whatever issue it would be. And they'd bring people on and have a discussion and maybe it would turn into an argument. Now it's almost guaranteed to turn into an argument.
Yeah. Hey, you know who's going to be in the broadcast booth for the first time next Friday night for a high school football game?
Jack Glor. Is he calling it, or is he just going to be a spectator?
I think he's gonna call a little part of it. Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to brag about that.
What game?
The Greenwich High football game. I think they're ranked like 5 or 6 in the state, and they're playing. I think they're actually playing a team from Rhode Island next week. So I'm a little unclear about exactly what he's going to be doing, but he seems excited for it, and it was funny. I muted the volume on the game. I think it was the Monday night game that we were watching because I wasn't traveling, and he was like trying to call a couple of the plays. He was doing a hell of a lot better than I could. And I wonder, I think like Madden has helped him like learn some of those formations, honestly.
Right.
And I do think it's made a difference. So, but I've gotten him some books. I bought him like the Pat Kerwin book, which I really like, Take Your Eye Off the Ball, to sort of learn some of the concepts, like 11 personnel, 12 personnel, all that stuff. And but he's excited. So we'll see.
Has he got a board? Is he making a board with all his notes and names and pronunciators?
We're trying to get him to do that. Make sure you know all the players, and yeah.
Did he use Tim Graham and friends on his reel when he approached the high school about this?
That was what got him the job.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, once you have that on your resume, you can write your own ticket, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm surprised I didn't get some phone calls just to double check references to make sure that it wasn't a forgery, because there's a lot of those going around where people like to pretend that they were on the show. We've had to shoot a few of those down.
Fake Fs. That's what we call them.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Jeffrey, how do you feel about your Buffalo Sabres?
I like Lindy being back. I like it. It seems like there's been definition to the moves that have been made in terms of shaping like what someone wants and what he wants, I think. And so I'm encouraged by that. I don't know whether if there's some like, the same with the Bills with losing Diggs, whether there's some like addition by subtraction, losing Skinner. Who else did we lose? I'm forgetting.
Leadership, Okposo, Gergensons, kind of the
yeah.
But the culture and the leadership of the team is different.
I think Lindy will help with that, especially with his Buffalo. Like I don't know about you, but I still remember going to the Odd and watching Lindy Ruff play, and he's a fun guy to watch, and he's part of Sabres history. I'd love to see huge things out of Jack Quinn this year. I think he's like maybe the one guy I'm watching, maybe more than anybody else. And then I think the goalie situation is going to be really interesting to watch too. Like, I don't know how much Levi plays and how he plays when he's there. I think they'll both play well.
Yeah, they're going to have to determine ahead of time what the workload's going to be, because if philosophically UPL is going to be the workhorse, then do you want Levi in Rochester where he's getting the time? Or you weigh also, is it better to be with the team and practicing versus playing against AHL competition? I don't know at that age. I mean, my take is that you should be playing as much as possible, but I don't know what the Sabres are thinking in that regard. Lindy Ruff is not known for his goaltending management. I mean, he was blessed to have Dominic Hasek and Ryan Miller, but
Yeah.
at times he was known for struggling a little bit to figure out what to do with his goaltending.
You covered him and you know him. What is Lindy Ruff known for? Not to ask a dumb question.
What is he known for? So, I mean, I have an answer in my head, but I'm trying to think if there's a different way I can say it, because I've said it this way a lot. So I guess I'll just go with it again, and we'll maybe riff a little bit. Maybe you'll draw something else out of me. He is a Clint Eastwood character. He is the man's man, the guy that everybody wants to impress when you see him, because he is a straight shooter. He's a regular dude. He's funny. He has a quiet charisma about him, but he's also very demanding of his players, and I think of the people around him, but in a healthy way. And I would even say that as a reporter. I mean, I would come into a news conference and I'd be like, I got to be ready to go here. Not out of nervousness or anything like that, but I don't want to have to waste this guy's time. I think I learned a lot as a reporter in that regard. I think Sean McDermott has a lot of this in him also. And there's like a fatherly vibe to him where people just want to impress him. And I've had discussions with several players. I mean, I've mentioned it before, so I guess, I mean, these were off the record conversations, but they were so long ago, and I've talked to them about this. But I've had Jay McKee, for instance, a discussion with him in which he was going through a stretch where he thought Lindy didn't like him, and that was really bothering him. It was hurting his play. Lindy was on him for some certain things, and he wasn't disagreeing with Lindy. It was like these players want to please him. Václav Varada, I had a conversation with him one time where Lindy was critical of him, and it really hurt his feelings, like, because this was important to him. These guys want to play and perform for Lindy Ruff. Now, and Mika Norton was another one. But the game's changed, and I don't think players are necessarily wired that way. They come into the league with a lot of leverage already. And it's not like it used to be where I'm going to have to learn how to stay within this system and I got to make it work or else I'm not going to have a job type thing. There's not as much of that anymore. And Lindy alluded to that in his news conference when people would ask him, how much have you learned since the last time you're at the Sabres? And he had the anecdote about, players don't talk on the phone anymore. You have to text today's player. You have to be available, in different ways than you ever did before. And he was always kind of on a different level than everybody else. And I don't know that necessarily works anymore. But anyways,
but you think he recognizes that?
It seems that way. I mean, as I was reading all the interviews and I wasn't able to attend, it seems like every time he's had a news conference, the Bills had something going on. Even just this past week, they played I was in Miami when they started rookie camp and they're doing that news conference. But yeah, but he's that guy. He's a large presence. And if he can translate to today's player, which he did in New Jersey, I mean, it was goaltending that did him in bad goaltending. It wasn't like he mismanaged it. I think that the Sabres floor is way higher under Lindy Ruff. I don't know. Are they going to make the playoffs? I'm not going to say yes for sure, but if they don't make it, it's not going to be because Lindy Ruff screwed it up. It's going to be for different reasons.
Do you think they do?
Yeah, I think so, but I don't think it's a shoe-in.
Jonah, do you think they will?
Yeah, I think they do for some of the same reasons Tim mentioned. I think they're going to get better and have a lower floor and be more of win more games, even if they're not a better team and a team more capable of contending for the ultimate championship, but a team that will be more responsible and win more close games and not lose games early the way they did last year. But I think having been around the first 2 days of training camp practices and even before that in the prospect challenge and Lindy Ruff's few press conferences he's held the last couple of days and the players talking, I think this team, specifically the returning players, this group and this coach are a good match for each other at this point in time, where Lindy's style and a bit of his old school approach, and as Tim mentioned, getting, the respect of the players is very much being welcomed by players like Tage Thompson and Alex Tuck, who have been star players under the previous coaching staff, but they tried to make the playoffs with what they thought were good enough, talented enough hockey players and roster and didn't. And they realized they need something different in their approach and the accountability. They're asking for a coach that'll bench players who makes mistakes. They don't seem to mind that Lindy Ruff is stopping practices to yell at them and make them do push-ups they did today when there was a bad line change. And I think over time, especially once the team starts winning and is a playoff team, maybe in future seasons, NHL players might get sick of that. And maybe some of the new players don't need that. They've come from winning teams and they know how to play and won't respond to that in the same way. But I think the Sabres core players right now want a coach like Lindy Ruff, and it's going to have an immediate effect on the way they play. And I think the results, maybe it won't last too much longer beyond getting this team back into the playoffs, but that is what this franchise needs more than anything right now, is to end the drought and start kind of a new era of, no longer being in the longest playoff drought in NHL history.
Yep.
He might be the next general manager.
Yeah.
Of St. Bonaventure basketball.
Oh boy. How interesting is that?
Before we let you go, Jeff, what do you make of that? Or do you have much of an opinion? I mean, Adrian Wojnarowski leaving however many tens of millions maybe on the table to go back to St. Bonaventure.
Yeah. What they say he was making $7 million a year or something at ESPN, something like that. But listen, I always thought the thing I always liked about Woj is that he was breaking all these stories, but he always seemed like just like a good guy, and not like it. You always got the sense, and I know he was probably at his phone constantly. He's only getting 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night, but you just got this sense that it wasn't the most important thing for him, even though he was breaking all, and now it wasn't the most important thing for him. Because he's walking away from all that money. And it's just interesting to think about and why someone might do that. I guess it's the love of St. Bonaventure.
The money is obviously great and people are going to roll their eyes. It's not a job I'd want to do. I mean, money's not that important to me. I mean, pay me half that to do something that's half as hard, I guess. Yeah. I'd settle that would be what I'd want. But being an insider just seems like such a hollow existence. And I'm around insiders all the time when I go to national events, and they can barely have a conversation and be social. They are
because they have to be on their phone constantly.
They have to be.
But
and they're even when nothing's going on, they live in constant stress that something is about to go on, or one of my competitors is about to have something. It is just constant. I wouldn't want to live like that. And I wouldn't want to do that kind of work either, because it's misty. It's gone. I mean, an injury update, something for your fantasy roster. It just wafts, and there's nothing to hold on to.
It's not for you and it's not for me, which is why I'm not a beat reporter right now. But some people it is for. You get the sense that Schefter, for all the flack he gets, you get the sense he loves it. I think he loves it. And there are guys I think who really do love it. And if that works for you, then great. But Woj is, I think, one of those guys I don't want to do this forever. And
he's obviously wired different. I mean, he wants to spend the rest of his life in Olean, New York. I mean, it's a great place. It's beautiful. And I mean, the whole thing, but
that's how Bonaventure grads are. It's amazing that it's like how they all are, but you're talking maybe the most successful or one of the most successful graduates in history who's gone on and done bigger things in bigger cities and bigger levels of sport, bigger level of basketball, and is still pulled back to the alma mater and getting the Bonnies back to the Final Four and making up for
Oh
Bob
man.
Lanier's broken leg and the national championship that was taken away from them, you know, almost before Wood was born. But it's like that's in their DNA. And you see
Maybe
it
he
with
can do
regular
it.
Bonaventure grads, the way they take these pictures at weddings with the banner, and this is just maybe a really high profile version of that. And then all the Bona grads that seem so happy for Woj, and I'm happy for him too. And I think everybody's kind of happy for him that he was able to do this on his terms.
Yeah.
But if he did this to be the general manager at UConn, where he's good friends with Danny Hurley, and that's a national championship winning program that could have made sense in a lot of ways, closer to where he currently lives in New Jersey. But it would have hit a lot different, especially in Western New York and for the Bona faithful, and it kind of restores
Yeah, it's amazing.
all that pride that they already have, but it gives them a real shiny avatar of why these Bona graduates feel that way about Olean and that campus.
When I was on the Buffalo News news side after I left ESPN and came back, I was in a pod, our desks. I was surrounded by Bob McCarthy, Dan Herbeck, and Charlie Specht, and Lou Michelle. I don't know Lou. Was Lou a Bona guy? Anyways, but yeah, it was obnoxious. The Bona talk with these guys. I mean, it was great. It was refreshing to hear
you in
because
that newsroom.
nobody gives a shit about Baldwin Wallace, so it wasn't like I had anybody to battle back with. But Jeff, anything else you want to get to? What are you working on for CBS Saturday morning?
We got a piece. I just was in Tennessee yesterday interviewing Richard Powers, who wrote the Overstory, a Pulitzer Prize winner a few years back, and he just has a new book coming out. So I talked to him about that, and that's going to air, I think, next week. Last week I was in California for a few stories. Went up in an F-18. I think
You've been in a fighter jet before, though,
yeah,
haven't you?
yeah. So you've seen it in my office before. So we've been following the X-59 program, what NASA's been doing, which is this they've been trying to develop planes that can fly supersonically commercially.
And you're sure you don't want to be an insider and get tweets and texts? You sure?
For years now.
That? You sure about that?
And
it sounds like an all right gig.
That was fun. You're funny. Yeah, so we'll see. This is why I wouldn't be doing that. I can't go up in a fighter jet if you got to have your phone on, with you at the urinal,
right,
every second. So no, but as I say this and say that that's not what I want to do, I do think that some people work in that, and they excel in that area, and we need them.
Right.
I mean,
it's a skill.
And listen, there's no better appreciation of how important those guys are and ladies, doing this stuff. When you see, nonstop tweets or whatever else impersonating them and saying like some fake account breaking this thing. And they do that just to get off for a second. But you see how much people pay attention to this stuff, whether it's the baseball insiders or the football insiders. Anyway.
Yeah, people hang on their every character. And, Ian Rappaport at 3 a.m. on Sunday, when everybody's in bed, he's tweeting out who's probably going to play.
Yep.
So you can set your fantasy lineup.
When do they sleep? I don't know.
Ian has a personality. I like Ian.
I like Ian too. I do. He's cool he's good on camera too, because he can kind of be funny. A little bit like, he's good.
He's a wise guy. He doesn't take himself too seriously.
He is.
And that's hard to do in that line of work.
Yeah. It's funny. He was one of the ones I was thinking of when yeah. Anyway, it doesn't seem like he's wound too tight.
No, not at all.
So
none of the NFL Network guys are.
No.
Pelissero and Garofolo, all those guys actually are.
I like Pelissero. I like both those.
Maybe I'm
have
walking
fun.
back some of my harshness. I didn't want to.
That's
Insider is not a pejorative.
Well, you're the one who said it.
I did say it. I need to measure my words. I need to learn the meaning of the value of words. What's going on at Kenmore East these days? Can you get Jack Glor back to do a Ken East game?
I should. That's a good idea. What, Jonah? How are the Bulldogs doing?
You know, I don't think they're doing great, but I think I did see a score that surprised me. I think the football program is on a slight upswing.
Oh,
I'd have to look
nice.
it up, but I think they're less of a, they were a very beatable team for many, many years. And I think I saw some scores that made me a little bit encouraged for the future of that program.
Good. All right.
Well, Jeff, thanks for doing this, especially you just got back from the road, texting me from the airport yesterday, asking to be on Tim Graham and Friends. You are, if we had to do F power rankings, you're probably in the top 10.
What?
I was kidding. I couldn't just go ahead. You got to be number one. You asked to be on the show.
And I hope. I love the show. I love the writing. I love the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
My wife calling me. I got to take the dog out.
What's the dog? Well, let's see this dog.
She's not here right now. She's outside, but she's a new dog. She's a Brittany Spaniel. We got her she's only 5 months old.
Sounds adorable.
She's pooping all over the dining room.
Oh, you know who else asks to be on the show?
Who?
Nick Bakay.
Well, I like him.
So you
And he's
guys
being
are 1
honored.
and 2. But he invited me to sit at his table for his induction into the Buffalo Broadcasters Hall of Fame. So he's number 1 and you're number 2.
Oh, shit. Okay.
I'll tell you real quick. I was at a Bison's baseball game this past summer, and I ran into a friend from Kenmore East, and who lives in California, and I hadn't seen him in a while. He says, "Oh, I keep up with your podcast, Tim Graham and Friends. I love it. Another friend of mine really loves it, named Dave Glor." And I said, "Oh, he must like it when his brother's on." And the guy looks at me like with a blank stare, like, "Yeah, who's his brother?"
Who was the friend?
His name was Brett Owens, and he actually did.
Oh, I know. I love Brett. I love Brett.
It took him a minute. He was like, "Oh yeah, that too, that too."
All right. Thank you,
get
sir.
going.
I'm leaving.
Hey, don't log off before I can make this a clean sweep and thank everybody out there for watching and listening to Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK CPAs and Business Consultants. Be sure to subscribe, like, comment, do all the things that you can do to show your support. Jeff Glor, thank you. Jonah Bronstein, thank you. Until next time.
The financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions.